Okay, good morning. The last thing we discussed was Gilgulim. We're not going to finish the piece inside. I'll just mention 2 points about Gilgulim, about reincarnation. And that is this. One, the Ramchal seems to assume that the only function of Gilgulim is to help a person with their hashlama, meaning a person has to attain perfection. You have a certain objective, you have a certain goal in life, and if you didn't finish that goal, Hashem may bring the person back so that they can finish that goal. That seems to be the only thing, the only goal of Gilgulim. And he mentions there are many details, but he doesn't go into any other details. So I would just mention that when you look at the Sfarim that talk about Gilgulim, it's not a ton, but they do speak about 2 other possible reasons why a person comes to this world. One is this idea of completion. One is this idea that a person was not complete. But there are 2 other reasons, and actually I'm trying to remember who it was, but one of the Sfarim that speak about Gilgulim, one of the early Sfarim in the era of the Arizal, basically connected to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Yaakov is oftentimes associated with Hashlama, Mitzah Shlema, and therefore it's this idea of the Ramchal, perfection. But there's another reason, and this is a reason that oftentimes shows up in different stories or maybe in camp plays, and that is din. Yitzchak is din, and that is punishment. Right? There's probably a very famous idea that sometimes there'll be a Gilgul, not as a form of perfection, but rather as a form of punishment. Hashem, for whatever reason, decides that a person is not deserving to go straight to Gan Eden or even Gehenim, but rather they're going to come back to earth. To bring a neshama back to earth is actually a painful experience, and therefore the goal of the Gilgul in this respect is not a matter of reward, but rather Hashem puts them here simply for the sake of being punished, to cleanse themselves in some way before they end up going back to the Olam HaNeshamas, the soul world, and that's why they come here. There are stories about the Arizal, and this is also a matter of debate about what you could come back into reincarnation of. In other words, the assumption over here is that a person comes back as another human being. There are stories of the Arizal where he saw trees or rocks, and he would stop and he would daven next to them, and then the next day this big rock or this tree would not be seen, because according to this tradition, the person come back as reincarnation as a inanimate object, because that is a form of their punishment. They need to suffer in this world. I could only imagine what it would be like to come back as a tree, right, and have some level of consciousness. I don't know what that even. Whatever, but that is one expression of Gilgulim that is there as din. The last one, Avram Chesed, is that a person come back as a reincarnation for the sake of the world. In other words, sometimes the world needs a very lofty neshama, right? And therefore Hashem will go ahead and bring a lofty neshama back to this world, not because the soul needs anything, not because it's there as a punishment, but rather it's there as a means of helping the world. We need a Moshe Rabbeinu neshama in our generation. We need a Aaron HaKohen neshama in our generation. We need a Yeshua neshama in our generation. It's a gift to the generation, it's a chesed to the generation, and it's not about the person coming back to complete themselves in any way. One other last point, I think, maybe we'll see if we get to around some more, but the point, one other last point just for today, and that is that when we speak about coming back for Hashlama, obviously it begs the question, how do you know? How do you know what you're here for, right? It's a scary thing. Okay, Hashem brings you back down to earth, and now you to fix something, but he doesn't give you an instruction manual. Like, what is the meat I'm supposed to be fixing? What is the thing I'm supposed to be doing? And so also the Kubalim that speak about this suggest one of 2 very different approaches. One is that the hint that Hashem gives us is either the thing that we are best at or worst at. In other words, to have the level of insight that we can think about, what is one area that I excel at? Okay, so maybe Hashem brought me down to this world, gave me to fix this area, and gave me, some inclination towards these things, some aptitude towards this area, and the goal is to take that and elevate it. That's one approach. Or, again, to look in the mirror and say, what is one area that I actually really stink at, that I'm really not good at? Maybe that's why I'm brought into this world. So take one of those 2 extremes, and that is the perhaps the little insight that we have in terms of why Hashem would be bringing us back to this world, and use that as a motivation, as a map, as a direction, in order to fix ourselves so we could not come back down again, because it seems like it is not a good idea. It's not good for us. It's difficult. It's challenging. It's painful to the soul to constantly come back to this world. Okay, let's stop over here.